Good morning, everyone. My name is Bilal Sarwari. I'm here on behalf of Slow Food. Thank you so much for joining us bright and early for a talk on the slow beverage movement. I want to make sure that we all have plenty of time for questions at the end and a robust discussion. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'd like you to meet me, the moderator. I have served for 18 years as a slow food volunteer leader. I'm part of something that we call the Slow Food International Council. Slow food is in over 160 countries now, and we have representatives from some of the major nation chapters, and I have been lucky enough to have been promoted into that role as of last year as a representative of the United States. So Slow Food is global. We're in 2,000 communities all over the world. I'm the one lucky enough to get to represent our 80 chapters that are all volunteer run across the United States. I am also a gardener. That's my other role in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. It is my truest passion. I used to be an organic farmer for about 10 years, but I was joking with the cohort earlier that I was an okay farmer. I can grow most anything, and my rows were perfectly pristine, perfectly weeded. But if you came to me and said I need 200 pounds of potatoes every week for the entire fall, I'd be like, how do I do that? So I am a gardener. I love plants, and I also love this movement. I also work as a consultant for equitable, diverse, and inclusive food systems. Small companies and nonprofits hire me to kind of help implement their beautiful mission statements. I'm the guy who comes in and says how. So I'm always interested in the how once you've figured out the why. And more interestingly, I'd like you to meet our panelists. And I'm going to start with Danny. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I'm Danny Childs. I am a bartender and ethnobotanist. I come from the Philadelphia, South Jersey area, and I'm the author of the book Slow Drinks and the co-founder of the company by the same name, along with my wife, Katie. Slow Drinks, the company is, I mostly deal with consulting, so my two kind of passion projects in the city of Philadelphia are Bar Almanac, a Japanese bar kind of interpreted through the lens of the slow drinks movement, as well as La Jefa, which is sort of a new concept from David and Dan Suro in their space in Philadelphia. I also work with brands, hotels, event groups, you name it, and kind of teach them how to implement slow beverage practices into each of their businesses. In addition to this, I also do quite a bit of education these days. So I teach at the Rodale Farming Institute, which is kind of credited with being where the organic farming movement was born in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. So I teach farmers how to use different methods of preservation, be it fermentation or pickling or shrubs or maybe making bitters, to use what they grow, preserve them, and kind of diversify income and give value add to what they have. I also work with the Heaven Hill group, and we have partnered to basically drop me in different cities around the country to engage with the industry and teach bartenders in each of these places how to implement slow beverage practices into their programs. And then lastly, events. Although I'm a little bit of a reluctant event planner, it is a great way to sort of show and not tell what slow drinks are. I've worked with Slow Food for the better part of the last decade, starting on the Arc of Taste Committee. I'm a committee member for the Northeast and New England states. The Arc of Taste identifies and champions at-risk, endangered, and underappreciated foods. We're going to talk a little bit about this today. But what I work with mostly now with Slow Food is sort of, we have two scholarship cohorts. One of them is sitting right here in front of me. They're sponsored by Negroni Week funds. All funds raised worldwide during Negroni Week actually go right to Slow Food, and that translated to about $600,000 to the organization last year. So that's a plug for all of you to please participate in Negroni Week. And then I also lead a group to the Terra Madre Conference, which is Slow Foods. This year it's a national conference, but for the Americas, and every other year it happens in Turin, Italy. And at each of these conferences, I sort of teach bartenders or just people in the beverage industry, again, how to implement the slow food principles of good, clean, and fair into their beverage making practices. And lastly, we are organizing slow food as a big umbrella with different subsets like slow fish, slow meat, slow cheese, slow beans. And for a long time in the organization, which is about 40 years old now, beverage has really been limited to wine, occasionally beer, and cider. And so we're sort of making this counterpart umbrella category to slow food, which we're calling slow beverage in the organization of slow food. And we are looking at all different categories of beverage, whether that's wine or sake or indigenous ferments or cocktails or spirits, sort of forming coalitions of people in each of these industries to collaborate and sort of define what is slow within their realm. So I'll pass the mic to Leslie.
Actually, let's go ahead to Jim because that's my next slide.
I'm Jim Meehan. I have been in this industry since 1995, the last century. I remember in that last century making someone a gimlet and thinking that it would be better if I made this with limes instead of lime cordial from roses. I called that drink the gimlet, and it became popular in the late 1990s. That was probably the beginning of my slow drinks movement, of understanding that making drinks with real ingredients versus industrialized products is not only delicious, but makes you feel better as the person who makes them. I've done many things in this industry, and I've written extensively about it, so I will not tell you about it here because I want to move on to our seminar. I will also say that my back is slowing down, so I might be standing up a little bit during this seminar, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Leslie Merinoff Kwasnieski. I'm a distiller and the co-founder of Matchbook Distilling Company. I founded it with my husband, Brian Kwasnieski, and our partner, Paul Monahan, sitting in seat 1, seat 2. And yeah, I'm really drawn to the natural world and process and transfiguration of real ingredients into these drinkable photos. And I serve on the board of directors for Cornell Cooperative Extension for our Suffolk County chapter as a Treasury Secretary. And we operate a number of living labs, like one of the largest hatcheries of shellfish on the eastern seaboard, and a giant horticultural center that studies flowers and fruit and bugs, and then a number of 4-H programs for raising the next generation of farmers. And that's it.
Cool, and we'll take a short break.
Oh, co-founder? I'm a real co-founder, not a faux founder.
There we go.
Let's give it up for the caps.
Oh. Yes. Okay, and we can move on to the Jenny Lind Mellon aperitif.
Amazing. So we talked about the Arc of Taste briefly. That's this living, breathing catalog of at-risk, endangered, and underappreciated foods. One of them, from my home state of New Jersey, is the Jenny Lind Melon, named after the famous Swedish opera singer Johanna or Jenny Lind. If you've ever seen The Greatest Showman, the Hugh Jackman movie, he kind of falls in love with her in it. So she was brought from Sweden to the US on this international tour in the 1850s. It was probably the first transatlantic music tour ever. And Philadelphia at the time was the seed capital of the United States. And New Jersey, the Garden State, is where all of these seeds were primarily grown. The founder, William Mall, decided to capitalize on the arrival of Jenny Lind in the US, and he took this kind of obscure Armenian melon varietal from his catalog and he rebranded it the Jenny Lind, and it took off. It became one of their largest selling seeds. It was the top sold melon in both the city of Philadelphia and the city of New York for a very long time, until the way that we ate greatly changed and things stopped being grown for flavor and to be consumed at maximum flavor, and which also is typically maximum nutrition. And they were grown to be shipped or stored or to sit on a counter for a week and not go bad. And the Jenny Lind is not that. It is a very thin-skinned melon. It is very juicy. It is very high in sugars. And so it kind of like faded into obscurity over the course of time. I first learned of the Jenny Lind melon from a collaborator of ours in Slow Food. His name's Jeff Quattrone. And I used to manage a bar program in New Jersey called the Farm and Fisherman Tavern. We had a really big garden out back. And in our garden, I talked to Jeff about our garden, that we wanted to grow Jersey seed varietals, and he brought me this Jenny Lind seed. It was amazing. I saved the seeds, but I also grew cucumbers. And if you know anything about cucurbits, they're promiscuous, and the cucumbers and the melons crossed, and my seed stock was tainted. So a few years later, I write an article in Modern Farmer magazine about the Jenny Lind, and it was the only time I've ever written anything that kind of like took on a life of its own. And the Jersey, like South Jersey farming community, like really got very excited about me writing about this. And some people started just telling their stories and their memories of the Jenny Lind. One of them like, oh, I used to go in the morning to buy corn from this farm stand, and because the melons would be so ripe by the end of the day sitting in the sun, the farmer would give them away, and so we would just, chow on melons all night. One person said, we still have our grandfather's seeds out in the barn. One of them's Jenny Lind seeds, and if you'd be interested, we would give them to you, but we have no idea if they will germinate or not. They did germinate. Leslie, I think, probably found out when I wrote the Modern Farmer article, and so we started talking about, if we can grow this to scale, it'd be really cool to do a project. And I saved the seeds from that farmer's Jenny Lind stock, and I didn't grow cucumbers, and I got true Jenny Lind. And the way you know it's true Jenny Lind is it has this little knob on top, and they were all true to form. So I saved all my seeds, and then that winter I gave them to a farmer who I used to work for. His name's Teddy Moynihan, Plowshare Farms. And I gave him a couple hundred seeds, and he grew 500 or 400 pounds of Jenny Lind melon that Leslie turned into this deliciousness in front of us. And I'll let her talk about how she did that.
So I think in our modern world today, we're just living in this cacophony of synthetic scent and aroma. And it really separates us from something very vital to our humanity and our connection to the natural world. And I just, as a maximalist, want to bridge that gap in the whatever extreme ways that I can. And so once a year, I've been producing a spirit made from an arc of taste ingredient. So when Danny asked if I would make this Jenny Lind spirit, I jumped at it, not ever having smelled or tasted or knowing anything about it. And the first thing that I noticed about it when it came through the door wasn't actually the striking appearance, it was the scent. So the uncut whole fruit just was bursting with this vanilla cantaloupe smell. And so I knew, 500 pounds, sometimes we work with tens of thousands of pounds of something. So when we have these smaller quantities, we need to figure out how are we going to use as much as we can to get whatever qualities we can. And so finding a external layer of skin on a fruit that's so aromatic, it was a no-brainer. So what I did was I cut away the peel and I put that straight into a high-proof spirit, and I took all of the flesh of the fruit and I put that into a big tank with Chardonnay, already fermented, finished white wine. And so as that extraction was happening, the skins were macerating into alcohol, and the next day I distilled it. And as the spirit was coming off the still, it was insanely aromatic, so vanilla, and so just like popping with lilac, so floral, vanilla. It was a dream. to be honest. One of the best distillates I've ever, like single botanical distillates I've ever come across, which is just a freak of fate, you know? And when you go down these paths, these are the things that get to enchant you. Nothing like a synthetic cantaloupe like body spray, you know? And so, yeah, I just kept adding that distillate into the wine and fruit and juice mixture. And then at the end, because I lengthened it out, I really, in order to convey the full effect of the melon, I added organic cane sugar to like bring the sweetness up to about where the melon was sitting at, which wasn't too much sugar, just the right amount. And I think this is a really faithful representation of the fruit.
Thank you. It's delicious. Great.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Well, cheers, everyone.
Oh yeah, you have it in front of you.
Only 600 bottles were made.
And they've all been sold. So if you wanted to find it, you had to come here. Or it's on the menu at the Dead Rabbit or Teresi in New York City. And Astor Wine and Spirits sold through 400 bottles of it. So
Wow.
yeah, it was people. I think it connected with people.
Thank you for sharing that. I always love the stories behind food and spirits, and so I actually learned a few things that I didn't know about the Jenny Lynn melon, so thank you. Great. I'd love to spend a moment telling you about the slow food movement. Could I have a show of hands who's just heard of slow food before? Okay, easy. Great. Great. Slow food, when you hear slow food, I want you to think the opposite of fast food. Slow food began in Italy in 1986 as a protest to fast food. On the steps of Rome, there was a huge fast food chain that was going to open up, and they weren't loving it. And so the Italians were not, thank you, I can't name it. And so the Italians were not having it. And instead of showing up to this protest saying, like, we don't want this fast food chain with signs, they showed up with bowls of penne. And they said, we don't want fast food, we want slow food. So in 1986, a movement was born. And since then, slow food has spanned the globe, kind of guiding activists to continue the work of good, clean, and fair food for all. Now we're in over 160 countries and active in 2,000 communities across the world. I want to tell you a little bit about what good, clean, and fair means. It's really buzzy. Good, clean, fair food for all. That's awesome. But me being like the logistics guy, I'm like, great, that's an amazing mission, but how are we accomplishing that? So good food stands for delicious, healthy, and culturally appropriate food as a right for everyone. A diversity of people, cultures, places, foods, and tastes is key for resilient societies and ecosystems. What I love about the good part of slow food is that it ties in cultural foodways, it ties in the environment. All these things kind of resonate and harmonize with each other. You can't really have one without the other. For clean, slow food supports local and resilient food systems that regenerate Earth's precious resources rather than deplete them. For me, I always think of it as taking it a step beyond sustainability. Do you all remember about a decade and a half ago, it was all about like sustainable farms, sustainability, to sustain these levels. But really, we have to start moving beyond sustainability. We have to move a little bit beyond organic. We have to start thinking about repairing the damage that we've caused. If we sustain these current levels, we'll soon have a planet that we can't live on. So regenerative agriculture is about regenerating the soil. That's where everything starts. It's about pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and locking it back into the ground, where it belongs and where it can help enrich the soil. This is where the organic farmer in me comes out. I'm fascinated with soil biology because when you have really healthy soil, you end up having healthy plants and animals, which then results in healthy people. And for fair food, this is the part that really fires me up. We're trying to build economies based on solidarity, cooperation, and inclusion, and we're trying to empower food workers and consumers. So we're trying to make sure that the food that you eat is good for you, but also good for the people who are growing it. It's good for the economies. A lot of times, especially here in the United States, we're seeing these big conglomerate farms just soaking up all this land. But I guarantee you that money that they raise through just extracting all that food from the ground is not going straight back into the community. So slow food kind of butts against this idea of imperialism, this idea of just unfettered capitalism, but instead we use that to try to dismantle those ideas and support the communities the way they should be and the way it was actually about 70 years ago. This idea of industrial agriculture, this idea of fence row to fence row, just grow as much as you can of one monoculture crop, that's actually a very new idea. When you drive through those fields, when you're on a road trip and you see just those beautiful green fields of just like one type of corn or cotton or peanuts or sorghum, I know that greenness looks really beautiful to you, but I want you to think of it as a factory because they're just pumping chemicals into the ground just to pump more product out. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to diversify. We're trying to get people to grow in ways that are culturally appropriate, like the Jenny Lynn melon, trying to bring back those old food species. And we're kind of taking a multi-pronged approach. So slow food is a really, really big movement. As you have an idea, and as Danny alluded to earlier, we do a lot of things. If you're interested in getting involved, I encourage you to visit slowfood.com and find the thing that really fires you up, find the thing that really interests you, and then just kind of start slow and start small. And then from there, you'll kind of branch out into the things that really interest you. I also would like to invite you all to Terra Madre Americas. Terra Madre means Mother Earth. Terra Madre builds on the success of Terra Madre in Italy, in Turin, a conference that we hold every other year. This is an open invite. It is a free conference. We'll have producers from North and South America. We'll have workshops and seminars. Some of the ancillary events are paid, kind of like here at Tales of the Cocktail. But it is an open invite to everyone. This is the first time that we're doing this as well. So we're taking the existing Farm to Fork Festival that happens in Sacramento, California, and we're kind of putting the slow food spin on it. So I'd love for you all to come join us. We also will continue having Terra Madre in Italy every other year. So on the off years of the Italy event, we're going to have it here in the United States. Also a great opportunity to meet producers from all over the world. If you all are ready, I'd like to do a little bit of a panelist Q&A. Starting with Danny, what does slow mean to you?
Slow to me means, I think there's a literal interpretation, the sort of metaphorical interpretation, and then sort of an idyllic one that I always come back to. Literal, when I am making slow drinks, a lot of times they take a long time. So if I'm fermenting a soda, that can take 3 to 4 days. If I'm fermenting something alcoholic, that can take 1 to 3 to 6 months. Some of the liqueurs I make take up to a year. Also just the practice of existing in seasonality, you know, in the mid-Atlantic, we've got like 2 weeks where strawberries are perfect and you get as many of them as you can and you preserve them as much as you can so you have them for your bar. But then when they're done, and that long wait for them to reappear the following year begins, and that is an inherently slow process. Metaphorically, I think of slow drinks and the slow beverage movement as a literal extension of the slow food movement. So taking these principles of good, clean, and fair and incorporating them into what we do. And so, like Bilal said, is it good for us? Is it good for the planet? Are the seeds clean? Are they non-GMO? Are they raised on a farm that's clean? Are they processed in a clean way? And then fair is the word that I think I focus on the most, and looking at the entire supply chain from the producer of that seed to the people who planted it, to the people that harvest it and process it, down to the bartenders and down to the consumers. Is everybody paid a fair price or paying a fair price? Because if we're doing this for, the 1%, then what the hell's the point of it all? And then lastly, sort of the idyllic interpretation of it is, I think that when you have a slow drink in front of you and you taste it, it should be consumed slowly. There's so much that goes into that. I always come back to like the 4 Ps. I say people, place, plants, and process. So much thought went into creating that drink, and it's literally like a microcosm of all of those things. So, I think it's a beverage that's best enjoyed slowly, although sometimes that's like, wishful thinking, but.
I think I don't spend enough time thinking about what slow food means to me. I do think that it's okay because it comes to me very intuitively, because I'm so drawn to the work. Not only the process of my own, but also the work of the farmers who are bringing me the agriculture. So just spending time with them and understanding the process in the fields. And then for me, I'm not trying to get into the mindset of what a laborer's life is like, because maybe not life, but the actual work, because I am a laborer. Like I work with my hands. I make everything from scratch. And so I think it can be hard to kind of guess what goes into processing fruit and distilling it. But when you do every step yourself, you stay very close to it. I suppose that's what slow food means to me, is being very close to the process, being very close to the substance.
For me, the slow means more not fast. I think that there's an urgency to fast, and there's an urgency in the industry we work in hospitality. And if you think about it, when you're in a rush, or when your guests are in a rush and they want something really quickly, or they wanted it before you could conceivably make it for them, I feel like hospitality falls apart. And there's a great book coming out this fall that I had a chance to read, but it talks about really how guests, or how people who receive hospitality should think about their experiences in bars and restaurants. And I think that the state that I wish that we could help bring people into to receive these values and these ideas is really a state of grace. And when you think of grace, it's a position of being open. It's a ability to receive what is happening around you and to see what blessings you might have in that moment. So I feel like when I think of slow, I think of slowing down. I think of being in the moment, focusing on who I'm with, focusing on what I'm fortunate about and for. And when I step into that moment of grace, either when I'm serving or when I'm receiving hospitality, that channel between who is feeding me, or who is, slaking my thirst, or who is in front of me, opens up. And I think that for me is like the nexus when I think of slow.
Thank you. And Leslie, why do you think change needs to happen now?
I can't believe you're doing this to me. Only because in our pre-meeting, I was like,
Oh, is
Danny
this the
and Jim
one?
are going to do such a good job answering this question.
You can pass it too if you want.
I'm going to pass.
Go.
I know you would have had a great answer. I am going to interpret this in a biodiversity standpoint,
Please, yeah.
because that's what I often work in the most. When you think of the sheer number of tomatoes or apples or corn around the world, and then you think what is available to most consumers in this country, we have a fraction of a percent of global biodiversity represented in our grocery stores. And that fraction of a percent, as I mentioned before, is typically chosen for shelf stability and not flavor. The food world, I think, over the last 10, 15 years, I think a lot of, this can be credited to restaurants that maybe are for that top 1%, the Noma, Chez Panisse, Blue Hill at Stone Barns. They're making really incredible food. They have incredible, very large staffs, but they're doing that because they are seeking out very diverse ingredients, and then they're processing them in very thoughtful ways, and preserving them in very thoughtful ways. And the same can and should be true with drinks, but I think that the industry for a very long time has been focused on what I often call like the back of the bottle model. So when you look at the back of a bottle of Campari, it tells you how to make a Negroni. And it wants that Negroni to taste the same in New Orleans as it does in New York City, as it does in Shanghai. For me, I think that don't get me wrong, sometimes a good Negroni is wonderful, but I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in tasting the local flavors of the place and the people that are serving me drinks. And I fully embrace and am excited by variation in flavors. If you're doing an in-house ferment, that flavor changes throughout the year. If you're working with produce, different years result in different ingredients. And so standardization, which has kind of been the North Star of the beverage world for a long time, I understand its role, especially in mass-produced things, but I think that we really need to start putting attention and emphasis into kind of saying to hell with that and embracing the opposite.
Thank you, Danny. Go ahead, Jim.
Show of hands, when you were smaller, do you ever remember taking a trip during the summertime, maybe a summertime vacation with your family, and you drove somewhere and your windshield was just covered in bugs, and like really like a lot of bugs, maybe your lights, it's like kind of freakish. When's the last time that happened to you, when you went on a road trip and your car got covered in bugs? There you go. Well, I'm glad that some of you I'm sorry that some of you have still had that experience, but I feel like the answer to why does this change need to happen now is because there is a frightening loss of biodiversity happening that is, maybe we're not seeing it at the apex predator level of humans, but we're seeing it in a much smaller level. And I think if you look more closely, you see it all around us. And so I think when we think about what these changes that need to happen in our world are, we need to look beyond just ourselves and look at the animals and plants and the beings that we can't see or that we can't communicate with, that are sort of quickly disappearing, and gather a sense of urgency with this work.
Thank you. And what defines good, clean, and fair in beverage?
I feel like we've kind of covered it.
I think so
Right?
too. I like to be really thorough, so I would like to move on.
I think all of the panelists, we're also thorough.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you again to our CAP team for... Side note, if you can imagine, I've been to a few conferences, and this one, I've never felt so well taken care of. Usually I'm kind of having to like haul everything myself and set up myself, but I had like the reverse happen here. I was like, wait, is everything good? Like, does everyone have everything? But no, it's already smoothly done, so thank you. Would you like to tell us about the Raffignac?
So speaking to everything we've been talking about here about local and sort of drinking something local, this is the Raffignac from Cure here in New Orleans. This is a recipe featured in my latest book, The Bartender's Pantry. Neil Bodenheimer shared this with me. It's an old sort of classic New Orleans drink that was originally made with rye. He is serving his with Armagnac, which is pretty darn cool. There's a huge history of brandy drinking here in New Orleans. The shrub is made with, and shrub is like a way to preserve fruits, or, it's like Danny can tell you more. But the interesting note that I'll sort of mention, I know we got a lot left to cover and we wanted to open up for questions, is that when I was writing this book, The Bartender's Pantry, one of the sort of core things I did was to really examine my own sort of biases and preferences, and like these guys who live in a part of the Northeast which is filled with like amazing produce. I live in Portland, Oregon, which has been lampooned in the show Portlandia. The reason why that show is funny is because it's all true. But I thought a lot about how, I may have access to these vegetables and fruits in quantities that I can afford and enjoy, but there are a lot of people who live in food deserts. There's a lot of people who live in areas where they don't have access to farms. And so one of the things I did throughout the book is examine those sort of biases and thought about how I could talk about this topic to a larger group. And what was interesting was that I started talking to experts. I found that, for instance, like in a bumper crop harvest, there might be so much fruit on the trees, but in a bumper crop, because of capitalism, a bumper crop of great fruit or vegetables is going to drive down the cost of that because there's so much available. And there are many situations in which it's not economical to harvest that food. So that food, rots in the field. And so there are instances where not just using like 19th century preservation methods, but using modern preservation methods like freezing is something where you can preserve the freshness and ripeness and deliciousness of a berry or a fruit and not suffer. So this is a shrub he makes from IQF, individually quick frozen raspberries. Raspberry is a really delicate berry that really kind of has to be very delicately harvested and doesn't really store very well, but it actually really freezes well without very much degradation in use. So frozen berries those go in the vinegar and a little sugar added and gets blended together, and it makes an amazing cordial. It allows you to utilize the taste of fresh raspberries all year round in a historic preservation method. Pretty cool.
Thank you. And Jim, you can hold on to the mic. Why the adoption of slow food principles?
Another thing, sorry for the commercial plugging here of this book, is that I started this book out with a flat out sort of non-negotiable statement that making drinks is cooking, full stop. It's not like it's not a subset of it. It's not a relative of it. It is cooking. And so I feel like I've always intrinsically understood that like a chain being as strong as its weakest link, that the ingredients that we work with as bartenders or as cooks are the relationship between their quality and the deliciousness of the drink is amazing. I think one thing we that I had never even thought of in 30 years of working in this industry, that I addressed in this book, and then I'll be talking a lot more about in the years ahead, is that I think as cooks or as bartenders, we spend a lot of time externalizing, how we can take these great ingredients, make something delicious in a glass or on a plate, and then serve it to a guest and make them happy. And I think one thing that's been kind of lost in this equation is how gratifying and what pride it fills us with as the people who serve that food or serve those drinks when we're proud of the ingredients we're using, the relationships we have with the people who gave us those ingredients, and the benefits we can give to those farmers or those distributors when we work with their products. So I think, why do we use these slow food principles? Not only to serve more delicious food or drinks, but for that sense of pride and accomplishment that we feel when we're doing it the right way.
Thank you. And Leslie, what do you mean by farm-first production?
So I think when a lot of people start liquor brands, it is very brand first, recipe first. I want to make this thing. There is a gap in the market. And there's obviously a place for business in this industry. But for me, it really does start with the work and this drive to practice this transfiguration of the natural world. So I live on the North Fork, and the North Fork is the North Fork of Long Island, New York. And I live at the most northeastern tip, and I'm surrounded by farms and water and vineyards, and it is so dreamy. And we have a very long tradition of cooking outdoors, cooking in the ground, like clam bakes, a lot of fire cooking. And a very long storied fermenting oyster tradition that I'm just starting to learn about from my oyster friends at the hatchery. getting to apply that, getting to go to the farms and seeing what's growing well here, what wants to grow well, what would be a dream if I came and asked you for, like, let's grow that, which is how I wound up starting to make all these spirits from squash and pumpkin, which are so resistant to the fungal pressure that is very common to our very coastal homeland. And then I also started to make spirits from sunchokes. Does anyone here know what a sunchoke is? A bunch of people. Do you know that sunchokes or Jerusalem artichokes are largely comprised of inulin? And does inulin sound familiar to anyone? It's the carbohydrate in agave. So clam bakes, agave. I just naturally started steaming it started with a few hundred pounds of sunchokes, steaming them and smoking them in these big fire pits we dug. And now, last year I did 22,000 pounds of sunchokes.
Oh my
And
God.
it's like, yeah, so sometimes people are cute and they're like, hey, I would love to work at a distillery with you for a couple of days. And I'm like, fantastic. Drink a lot of water, go to the gym, prepare, because we'll just be shoveling sunchokes for days, and you can absolutely grab a shovel and join in. And it is intensely labor intensive. So they're on the back of my Tacoma pickup truck, and I just stand up there in this bin, shoveling out sunchokes into a fire pit, and then shoveling them back at the end of the day, and then co-fermenting them with honey, and then distilling them to proof. Like, I wouldn't have just been sitting around and like ideate. Maybe, I don't know. Not me. Someone else probably ideated the idea of creating spirits from sunchokes. But for me, it was talking to a farm, and the farm being like, you plant one sunchoke tuber and you get 12. And then they grow these like really big green stalks that are so resistant to fungal pressure and herbicide, never. Like, these plants are their own inherent herbicide. Nothing can grow around it. It is so good at efficiently pulling nutrients from the soil. Also, speaking of pulling from the soil, you know that the first rule of cooking is you like start with good ingredients, and then your only responsibility is to like not fuck them up. That people know that, but do you know why the healthiest ingredients make for the most flavorful ingredients? It's because flavor and aroma, those are actually defense mechanisms, or they're for propagation techniques, like for the plants to employ for their survival. And so healthier plants just produce more of those things. And live, healthy soil is filled with mycorrhizae, these fungal networks that they wind up, they almost have these like parasitic relationships with the plants. They don't really survive as well without one another. When you spray fungicide, when it gets into the soil, it kills off the mycorrhizae networks. Those networks do crazy things, like when on the outside of a vineyard, for instance, a lanternfly comes in, and then through the mycorrhizal network, you get these signals for the plants to start producing whatever chemical warfare they can to either attract their predator's predator, or attract propagators, or start producing a toxin for their predator. It is so mind-blowing, and it just happens to be that those things are what makes plants so delicious. Like jasminoids, those are scents of jasmine that is created as a defense mechanism from plants, like leaves, when they experience some damage. Have I been talking for an hour?
No, this is amazing. I'm like,
I like that.
incredible.
Fun first.
Farm first. I really like that you touched on sunchokes, because as someone who's grown sunchokes before, anyone in here, let me tell you, as a gardener and a farmer, when you say they proliferate, wow, they will take over an acre within like a year and a half, no exaggeration. But what a boon to the farmer to have someone who can take 22,000 pounds of sunchokes and use them. That's amazing.
How we grew from the same farmer. We started at 250 pounds, and now we're at 22,000 pounds.
Incredible.
Yeah, working into your bar program, I have so much.
Amazing. Danny, how does ethnobotany intersect with slow beverage?
So Ethnobotany, for anyone who's not aware, is the subset of the field of anthropology that studies how people use plants. And so that can be how people use plants for food, for technology, material culture, medicine, or as I try to show in my book, Slow Drinks, in drinks. And my background in ethnobotany was I worked with 3 South American indigenous populations, the Shipibo, who live in the Amazon, the Mapuche, who live in the northern part of Patagonia, and the Licanantai, who live in the Atacama Desert in the north of Chile. And this was all trying to find plants that were basically help this resistant species of bacteria, pathogenic bacteria. But I use so much of this work in what I do today. Number one, to see that until a few generations ago, people were inextricably linked to the plants that grew around them and relied on them for their survival in many, many different aspects of their lives. But also that they had to take this raw material. I was thinking about this in the extraction talk yesterday, if anybody was there. They have to take this raw material and then transform it into food or drinks or medicine. And this is, inherently one of the things that makes us human. And so this is the first time that I see people use techniques like fermentation or infusion or decoction or dehydration, all these different things that I employ a lot in beverage programs. I always say when you look at a bar, you can sort of draw a map of the world by looking at what's behind it, and whether that's through spirits, syrups, ferments, juices. All of these things come from plants. All of these plants come from places, and all of these places have people that really discovered and gave us the knowledge on how to use these things. And so I always felt like with ethnobotany, it's something that you have to go far away. I always thought in school, like I have to go to South America to study ethnobotany, but ethnobotany is all around us all the time, everywhere. And so I think that knowing the stories of what's behind your bar, and a lot of times those are really sad stories of colonialism and slavery and theft, but also knowing the ingredients around that are from your area and figuring out how to tie them into your program so you can tell the story. And, as I mentioned, I work with a Japanese concept and a Mexican concept, and we can use our local ethnobotany in the mid-Atlantic to tell the story of their ethnobotany thousands of miles away. So how do we do that? I do a lot of foraging, I do a lot of gardening, and I work very closely with a lot of farmers. And as you work closely with farmers for longer and longer periods of time, like Leslie said, sometimes your sunchokes can go from 2,000 pounds a year to 22,000 pounds. But you also learn what struggles do they have? Like what works really well for them? The next project that Leslie and I are working on is there's a local peach farm near me in South Jersey, and every peach farm thins 80 to 90% of the green peaches from their tree. And typically they just leave them on the ground to, return to the earth or throw them into a compost pile or whatever. And we said, could we take these from you? And, there's a very long tradition of making umeboshi with unripe, peaches or plums, but an unripe stone fruit from Southeast Asia. Can we take these from you? It's a really interesting story about an ingredient that often goes to waste, but it's also a whole nother stream of revenue for them. And so ethnobotany, I think, it's a really big idea, but you can implement it in a lot of different ways. And this chart that's on the screen behind me is sort of like the distilled, all the information from our book, Slow Drinks, distilled into a really easy to understand chart. And we always wanted Slow Drinks to be sort of a roadmap for innovation no matter where people lived. So even though like in the back half of the book, I go through spring, summer, fall, and winter in my home region, the book is now in China and Australia and Italy and, Southwest United States, way different environments. So at the top of this chart is rhubarb, but replace that with any other ingredient, And all of these things still hold true. So these are like the major techniques that I use to extract and preserve flavor. So fermentation, sugar preserves, vinegar preserves, and then alcohol preserves. And through this, of course, we love when things are fresh and in season. But I think that where my bar programs really shine is like the dead of winter, when we have like a stocked larder of ingredients that taste like when they were harvested at their peak and their prime, and they aren't shipped from halfway around the world. And this is sort of all of the techniques that we use to do that. And this is the last thing I say: when you're able to preserve botanical ingredients and you put this drink in front of people, it's this microcosm. I used this word before, but whether you're using something by the dash or the quarter ounce or the ounce or 2 ounces or whatever, all of those are opportunities to talk about where the plant came from, the plant's history, how you sourced it, and how it's a slow drink, however you approach that.
Thank you, Danny. That's great.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. A big hand for our panelists. I'd love to open up the floor for questions in the last few minutes. What has been coming up for you? What are you interested to learn more about? Menley. No, please. Do you need the mic?
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you for this, and everything's been very insightful, and not in a trying to blow steam up your ass sort of way, but I just think, okay, it's a two-part question. So when I think of slowness and when I think of quickness, I think of kind of this urgency that colonialism has sort of forced upon us. And thank you for bringing it up too, Danny. You were kind of touching on that. And so when it comes to sort of bringing people back into the movement and making it in a way where it's not first we've told you that you need to do it this way and make it quicker, and now we're saying slow it down, and now we're saying sort of use these practices that you might have rejected from your ancestors in the way of being previously. I'm thinking globally, right? How do we bring people in a way that doesn't feel condescending and that doesn't feel first we've rejected your idea of what slowness is, and now we're trying to make you do it again. I consider myself an herbalist after 20 years of cultivating cannabis and different herbs, but I don't look like one, right? And I don't necessarily feel like I have to subscribe to craft paper only, and you know what I mean, just certain things. And so I think generalizing this question and making it broader, it's just how do we bring people in who don't always feel like they belong in movements like this?
I will say this because I think there's, for a long time, we talked about some sort of those 1% restaurants. I think for a long time, the slow food movement kind of had this reputation that it was for the elite, that only people who could afford this premium produce or these premium restaurants who got to participate in it. And I think that before the pandemic, but certainly during it, there was a lot of soul searching that was happening on how to sort of overhaul that internally. And I think that we've done some really great work on that. And I really think that Slow Food is a true grassroots organization. Like Bilal said, we're in 160 countries around the world. We're in 2,000 communities around the world. This is a huge table. And even just in this initiative of starting the slow beverage movement in the U.S., the word from Italy is well, just so you know, this is going to start, hopefully follow the footprints into 160 countries around the world. We want all of them to have a seat at the table, documenting and drafting what this looks like. And so I think that the more people and the more voices and the more diversity that we can bring to the table to ensure that all views and worldviews and positions are sort of represented there, the better off we all are in Slow Food, and the better off everybody that we're trying to connect with is as well.
When we said hurry up, we were in such a different time. We were, in this country, we were segregated, and we were fighting a world war. And we were like, we need to feed the front line, and all of the men are getting shipped out to Europe, and women are going to work in factories and can't like prepare food, let alone grow it in their backyard. And I think companies jumped in to the moment, and they responded to the call, and they did a great job. But like the conversations we're having today and the way that we want to work together in this room, like we shouldn't be beholden to that like horrific moment in history, and we can like fight for something next, you know, like the next chapter.
I think that for me, as a leader in this industry, when I was younger, I thought that leading by example was enough, and I realized that it wasn't. I think that as a leader, you have to lead by example, but you have to inspire people to see the world and your vision the way you do it. And that means meeting them where they are and bringing them along and helping them understand why you see that things the way you do. And frequently when you do that, you'll find that there are certain things that you think are best in show that aren't, and you'll learn. And I think another thing that's really important is that, you know, in the last few years, there were a lot of companies and a lot of organizations that were looking at themselves, and I think one of the things I heard from what you were saying is just like, you know, I don't look like an herbalist, and I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion are things that we were making big strides on, and we've stopped making strides on those recently. And I think for me, one of the things that's been most troubling is that you frequently see, in order to skirt certain political things, like the word equity being dropped. So it's diversity and inclusion, but equity is no longer part of it. And I think that in addition to there need to be people who look like you in the spaces that you want to be in. And I think, frankly, like Bilal gives us a little bit of spice here, but it's three white people up here talking to you is not probably making you feel like maybe perfect. Hopefully, like you don't see that. But I think that we need to make sure that the spaces we're in are populated with the people that we want to be represented in our movements. And in addition to seeing the world the way we see them, we need to make sure that they understand that they can profit from it, and that living righteously doesn't mean living poorly.
I haven't figured that out. Hopefully soon.
I have more of a technical question with like using different ingredients that aren't necessarily standard or just coming to market or like part of a project. Like one of the problems that I experienced when I was a professional distiller was TTB, just like what in the world? And I got a lot of things that were unapproved, and I was very frustrated. I was just like, I can just do this illegally and not have the nightmare of this paperwork, but at the same time, like I want other people to experience these things, and I don't put all that energy into something just for nobody else to enjoy. So like when I was hearing the Sunchoke project, I was like, how did she even get that approved by TTB?
Working with the TTB has been a challenge. I am a master of the formulations website, and I do know how frustrating it can be. In biology, we have abbreviations, SP and SPP, and they sound similar. They're separated by one letter, but they mean opposite things. One means specific, and one means species pluralis. So one is like, this whole family of things is approved, and the other one is, this one specific variety is approved and nothing else. And the TTB regards it as the same thing. So you have to find your, so we released 2 spirits every single month, 2 completely unique formulas, brand identities for like 4 years. And I became, You know, the TTV part was exhausting,
Yes.
but I think the drive to produce like this is something so, the momentum, it just like really pushed me forward. Also, you don't obsess about the font type in your label, and you don't obsess about the pH of your liquid when you're on to the next one in a couple of days. And my philosophy to making spirits is really to capture what's in the natural world and bottle it. I get the feedback a lot that I'm so creative, but I don't think of myself as being creative. I think of myself as maybe like a producer of paint colors, and you all are the painters. And so like, I'm never gonna acid adjust. I'm just going to like produce from what is around me in the best methodology that I can. And then I'm going to find a way to get it produced by the TTV. And then this unfinished project then goes out for you all to use it as you try and create a cocktail that brings forth a certain flavor or feeling or place or what have you. But yeah, I don't know. The TTB is a challenge. You get really good at it when you have released a few hundred formulas, and maybe I should be selling that service to people.
If the TTV, like community and relationships with your fellow producers, will save you so much time and money, asking them what they've experienced, what they've been through, and how they got it through, contacting people, building relationships. Yeah.
That's true. Feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you all. You all have been a wonderful group. Again, thank you to our panelists for being here. I put up a slide for you all to stay in touch with us. I also would like to invite all of you to a slow beverage pop-up at Cane and Table today from 12:30 to 2:30. No RSVP required. It's free and open to everyone. We'd love to see you there, and we'll be talking a little bit more and having some delicious drinks. Also, a big thank you to Imbibe Magazine. They're the ones who got us out here through the Negroni Week Fund. It's one of our biggest fundraisers for slow food, and we wouldn't be here without them. So big thank you to them. And you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.